Night had settled, like a suffocating shroud beneath the mortal city, a labyrinth of shadow and squalor, where sunlight dared not tread. Here, amidst cracked stone and the echo of dripping water, Isolde found herself cast out, not just from her home, but from the world she once knew. The betrayal had been brutal, swift, and unforgiving. The noble clan she had sworn loyalty to had turned its sharp blades inward, their whispered accusations sealing her fate. Falsely condemned, stripped of rank and honor, she had been exiled into the shadows, stripped of everything but the will to survive. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled through the tangled alleys beneath the city's surface. The air hung heavy with damp earth and decay, the distant murmur of unseen crowds above a haunting lullaby to the forsaken. Every step was a battle against exhaustion, but retreat was impossible. She could feel eyes unseen, sharp tracking her every move through the dark, malevolent as the night itself. The prey was she, but tonight she would not go quietly. The chill brushed her skin beneath the threadbare cloak she wrapped tight against the damp chill. But it was the gnawing ache in her gut, the hunger, the heartbreak that cut deepest. Her hand absently traced the crescent-shaped scar carved into her left cheek, a souvenir of a fight she neither provoked nor won. That mark, that slivered crescent, was a symbol of everything stolen from her, a reminder that even beauty could be marred, even courage could be punished. "Not here," she whispered, voice raw and brittle as she slipped between jagged stones and warped metal debris. She had heard stories whispered in shadowed corners, tales of the Alpha King Kaelin, who ruled the shadow court beneath the mortal realm, with an iron will and pack of wolves, fierce enough to silence dissent. It was a place few entered, willingly. Fewer still escaped, but she had nowhere else to run. The faintest sound, a whimper, fragile and trembling, caught her attention. She paused, heart hammering in nervous cadence. The sound came from under the archway of a collapsed ruin, where shadows pooled like ink. She edged closer, senses sharpened and adrenaline flaring beneath her skin. There, trembling and bleeding, was a wolf pup no larger than her forearm. Its fur was matted with dirt and dark stains, patches of raw skin exposed where thorns had scored it. Eyes wide and wet with pain, it looked less like a fierce predator and more like a wounded child, vulnerable and desperate. Isolde's breath caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to abandon the creature and protect herself. After all, these were Kaelin's wolves, and anyone seen aiding one of his pack risked the worst kind of wrath. Yet, unraveled as she was, something gentler stirred beneath her broken shell. Her hands moved almost without thought, the memory of caring for her lost brother seeping through the years. Keep still," she urged quietly, voice trembling but steadying. Fingers trembling, she peeled back torn fabric from her sleeve, pressing it against the pup's bleeding flank. The wolf whimpered again, licking her outstretched palm with a rough, trembling tongue. That touch, damp and tentative, sparked warmth in her chest, a bond forged in fragility and silent understanding. Behind her, movement flickered like a shadow's breath. Eyes, glowing faintly amber in slitted slumber, watched her from the darkness, hidden but unblinking. Kaelin's wolves, predators of mind and muscle, gathered invisibly in rings of instinct and suspicion. They did not move forward. They did not howl. Instead, they observed from the veil of night, their primal muscles taut with a mixture of caution and intrigue. The kindness Isolde offered to their broken pup was unexpected, incongruous with the cold world they knew. It unsettled them, stirred something ancient, buried deep beneath their fur, the stirrings of protection, of something neither trust nor fear could deny. Her fingers lingered on the pup's fur, her eyes, storm-grey pools, reflecting pent-up storms, catching the faintest glimmer of life, returning to the trembling creature. A quiet pact was formed there, beneath the ancient stones and silent witnesses. She would sit with the broken one, bear its fragility against the dark, even if it meant courting the wrath of an alpha king. Air shifted, the atmosphere thickening in a pulse that seemed to echo the beat of Isolde's own racing heart. From the depths of the shadow court, he rose like a living storm incarnate. Kaelin, the Alpha King, whose dominion was absolute, whose wolves obeyed his every command without question. He was everything the legends had promised, and more. Tall and imposing, with thick raven-black hair swept back to reveal a jagged scar that branded him over his right eyebrow, Kaelin moved silently, but with the force of a tempest. His amber eyes smouldered with raw power, glowing faintly beneath the dull light that filtered weakly into the underground expanse. He was the apex predator, wrapped in the guise of a man, muscles coiled beneath dark fabrics that draped his broad shoulders. His gaze swept the shadows, the edges of his senses flaring as he detected the intrusion. The scent was faint, foreign, yet undeniably human. A woman, not just any woman. He could sense the wild steel beneath her skin, the marks of pain and something dangerously alive. She had trespassed near his den, the sacred space where his wolves rested and waited. His wolves circled closer, restless, their growls low and warning. But Kaelin raised a hand to silence them, a signal of control. Only his pack obeyed. Approaching the flickering light of a guttering torch, he found her sitting on the cold stone floor, the wounded pup cradled in her arms. She looked up, eyes sharp and wary, but there was no panic in her posture. "Why are you here?" His voice was gravel and thunder, an unyielding force tempered by restrained curiosity. "This is not a place for the lost and hunted." Isolde's mouth dried, heart pounding a primal rhythm beneath her ribs. She met his gaze steadily, refusing to shrink away. There was defiance in her stance, but beneath it flickered a flicker of something softer, more fragile. "I didn't mean to trespass," she said quietly, voice firm, despite the tremor beneath. "I'm not your enemy." Kaelin's amber eyes narrowed, skepticism etched across his chiseled features. "You have no right to be here, woman. You would do well to leave before my patience ends." The pup shifted slightly, whining in pain. Isolde's hand went to its side protectively, and as she lifted her gaze again, something shifted between them, an unspoken understanding. She was neither prey nor threat, but something else. Someone broken, perhaps, but not defeated. "I have nowhere else," she confessed, voice barely above a whisper. "Cast out, hunted. I have no clan, no home." Kaelin's expression darkened. There was a coldness in his amber eyes, a memory of betrayal and scars deeper than the flesh. He had no patience for weakness, but something in her presence stirred a different response. Neither mercy nor disdain, but an uneasy alliance born of necessity. "You will stay then," he said, finally, voice low and resolute. "Under my roof for the night, and while the pup heals." There was no invitation, only command. "But know this, I will watch you closely." Trust is earned, and betrayal is punished without mercy. Isolde swallowed hard, but nodded. "I understand." The wolves behind Kaelin shifted, their eyes glinting with intelligence and suspicion. Isolde could feel their gaze like a living weight, watchful, silent guardians who sensed the ripples she tried to hide. She was an enigma to them, the scent of old wounds and hidden secrets cloaking her like a second skin. As they moved deeper into the den, the atmosphere changed. The stale air gave way to a cavernous space, thick with the musk of wolf and man entwined. It was here, in close quarters, that the unspoken battle began. Isolde fought to conceal the truth of her heritage, the secret lineage that pulsed quietly within her veins. a power she barely understood herself, but Kaelin sensed it. The subtle shift in her energy, the flicker of something wild beneath the surface. His gaze lingered longer than necessary, eyes probing, as if trying to unravel the mystery she wore like armor. The primal energy between them crackled, electric and raw, a clash of dominion and survival of two broken souls on the brink of something neither dared name. Somewhere deep inside Isolde, dormant forces began to stir, awakened by the dominant, relentless pull of the Alpha King's presence. She sat stiffly, arms wrapped protectively around the fragile pup, every muscle taut with mistrust and silent questions. Kaelin's wolves prowled the edges of the den, restless but restrained, as if sensing the fragile thread that might bind them all or unravel into chaos. The night stretched ahead, fraught with tension, and beneath it all, something unbreakable was beginning to take root. Isolde felt the weight of their eyes like cold stones pressing against her skin, each glance a silent accusation, an unspoken demand for her to prove or fail her worth. The court, with all its venomous whispers and veiled hostility, was a maze of suspicion. She had no map to navigate. Here, beneath the city's cracked bones, the air was thick with ancient grievances and sharpened steel promises. Every wolf that approached her, every alpha's second in command, held their breath around her presence. Her only sanctuary was the frail pup, trembling in her lap, its broken leg not yet healed but growing stronger by the day, thanks to the quiet ministrations Isolde performed in stolen moments. They called her the broken pup's keeper, a servant at best, a shadow at worst, but she was more. She was the quiet healer, whose hands held a magic older than the rubble of the kingdom crumbling beneath them. This power, whispered in fearful tones and long buried in the bones of her lineage, was a secret she dared not reveal. To show it was to invite the claws of exploitation and the chains of servitude. So she worked silently, mending torn flesh, coaxing broken spirits back from the edge with salves drawn from roots and spells, whispered in a tongue that no one in the court could trace. The wolves learned to approach her with tentative steps. She could feel their pain, a raw thrum beneath her skin, as if the wounds they carried were part of her very spirit. One by one she touched the ragged edges of their injuries, her fingers tracing the paths where fur met torn sinew, and beneath her hands the darkness softened. The pup, the king's own scarred wolf, blossomed under her care. The broken limb knitting, the wide haunted eyes slowly filling with a flicker of trust. And yet, even as her healing hands worked wonders, the cold suspicion of the pack did not thaw. Kaelin watched it all, with an unreadable silence perched carefully on his features. The scar above his right eyebrow twitched when a sharp murmur of disapproval seeped from the shadows. His amber eyes, fierce, commanding, impossibly deep, followed Isolde, with a mix of fascination and something darker, something fiercely protective. The beast beneath his skin roared in agitation when the others cast their judgment, but Kaelin held the chains with grim resolve. The king's command forged an iron cage around his instincts. Yet, despite himself, the pull toward Isolde grew heavier with each passing day. He had seen broken before. He had been broken 1,000 times over, and yet something about her quiet strength unsettled even his fierce pride. The way her storm-grey eyes softened as she worked, the way her fingers moved with both gentleness and unyielding resolve. It was a language his wolf seemed to understand better than he did himself. The lines around his mouth tightened when the ghost of a growl slipped through his throat. At those who dared dismiss her, she was an unseen force, raw and potent, a secret the kingdom had tried to bury beneath years of fear and scorn. But it wasn't just the healing. deep inside her, shrouded beneath layers of shadow and fear, something awakened. It began as a flicker, a subtle shift of air, a pulse beneath her skin, like distant thunder, coiling in the veins. She felt it when she sat on the cold stones, the ruin of a broken altar nearby, humming faintly beneath her touch, old magic, from a forgotten age stirring in response to her bloodline's quiet song. Isolde tightened her grip around the pup as the sensation crept up her arms, her breath catching in her throat. This power was a dangerous thing, raw and untamed, a wild beast just beginning to claw its way free. If the court realized its truth, the ancient potent heritage she carried, they would tear her apart to serve their own insatiable ambitions. Better to bury it deeper, to wear her mask like armor and bleed quietly beneath. Kaelin's gaze turned darker the moment he saw the flicker of an unfamiliar glow in her hands, faint, almost imperceptible, as she pressed her palms to the pup's shivering frame. The whispered energy between them crackled with an unspoken bond, a wild thread weaving them irrevocably together. The Alpha King's beast growled low in his chest but did not break free. Instead, it curled protectively closer, as if sensing the fragile alliance forming under layers of stone and suspicion. Isolde, Kaelin's voice was sharp but not unkind when he stepped closer. Voice low, so only she could hear, they will never see you as anything but a threat while you hide in the shadows. You draw their attention like a lure. She met his amber eyes steadily, frustrations and fears warring beneath her storm-grey gaze. And what would you have me do? Reveal what I barely comprehend? Open myself to their knives and hunger? No. I'll survive this. Quietly, unseen, her tone was a whisper, but every word carried the weight of someone who had learned to live with scars unseen. He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once, stiff and reluctant. Silent strength has a place in this den, but know this, my wolves do not follow shadows forever. Sooner or later, they will seek the source of power within the darkness. His voice grew softer, and I will stand between that and you. The warmth in his words was subtle, but it set something deep in Isolde's chest alight, a fragile ember of hope amid the ruins. Even as they navigated the court's uneasy balance, Isolde's hidden magic grew in whispers and glimpses. The ruins themselves seemed to hum with a hidden resonance, ancient glyphs pulsing faint light beneath cracked stone, responding to her quiet touch. She discovered she could coax these energies to the surface in moments of need, a shimmer of protective warding here, a healing breath to mend what lay broken there. Yet every exertion left her drained, breath shallow, heart pounding a frantic rhythm of fear and exhilaration. One evening, as the dim glow of ember fires flickered against the cavern walls, a new threat unfurled from the shadows. Whispers reached her ears, voices steeped in venom, spitting through the murmur of the court, speaking of her bloodline. A conspiracy woven in hushed tones, threads tightening around Kaelin's reign, aimed at her hidden truth to shatter the fragile throne beneath him. Betrayal was a shadow that crept in close, colder than the stone beneath their feet. Isolde's hands trembled with silent fury and dread as she confronted the truth in murmurs too dangerous to ignore. The scent of treachery, sharp and bitter, wrapped around her like a steel noose, tightening with every breath. She alone held the key, the secret that could either bind the kingdom or tear it apart. Kaelin found her in the darkest corner of the den, eyes blazing with the fierce urgency of a storm about to break. "They move tonight," he said grimly. "They seek to use you against me. We leave before dawn or the pack will devour what little we have left." There was no time for argument, no space for the fragile trust slowly building between them. Together, They slipped through the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city, narrow and twisting veins of shadow and ruin beneath the mortal world. The stale, damp air pressed in close, a suffocating reminder of their fragile alliance and the danger stalking them. The wolf at her side, the broken pup now nearly healed under her care, pressed close, a fierce loyalty shining in its wide, molten eyes. Unlike the others, it followed only her quietly spoken commands. The bond between them stronger than any decree or fear. Kaelin's beast snarled behind them, restless but restrained, as if begrudgingly deferring to this unexpected protector. "Why does it obey you?" Kaelin's voice was low, laced with an echo of disbelief, as they navigated the winding stone corridors. Isolde's lips quirked, a sliver of uneasy humor in her storm-grey eyes. "Because the wolf sees what we don't say. It senses the truth beneath the lies." The tunnels closed around them like a tomb, shadows flickering in the weak firelight of torches long burned out. Every step was a gamble, every creak and whisper a possible death sentence. Yet, as they moved side by side, a fragile thread stretched taut between them, a connection forged not from words, but from shared peril. Kaelin's hand brushed hers in a rare, fleeting moment, fingers tightening ever so slightly. The touch sparked through her a current of something unspoken, trust, defiance, and a dawning need that neither dared name outright. "I will not let this court bury you again," he murmured, voice rough with restrained emotion. "Not while I stand." Isolde's breath hitched. This was no promise made lightly from an alpha king, nor a man accustomed to offering grace. It was a shield, forged from their mutual scars, the silent vow of two broken souls seeking survival, and perhaps, in the shadows of ruin, something that might yet bloom. As the tunnels stretched ahead, dark and treacherous, the broken pup stepped forward, nose twitching as it tracked their path through the underworld. Its fierce trust mirrored a fragile hope stirring deep within Isolde, that even in exile, even beneath the cold suspicion of wolves and men, something unbreakable could be born from the ashes of betrayal. The damp, suffocating air of the tunnels pressed against Isolde's skin, each breath tasting of ancient dust and forgotten sorrow. She followed Kaelin's lead, feet sure, despite the treacherous footing, heart pounding with the urgency of flight. The faint glow of the broken pup's amber eyes flickered in the shadows, a beacon of fragile hope amidst the encroaching darkness. Yet beneath the surface of her exhaustion, a restlessness began to stir, a tightening coil of power, barely contained, aching for release. A sudden collapse ahead forced them to halt abruptly. The earth beneath their feet trembled, a low rumble vibrating through the bone, echoing against rock walls. Kaelin's grip on her arm tightened, muscles coiled like a predator, ready to strike. The wolves around them growled, not in immediate threat, but confusion. "What is happening?" Isolde whispered, voice brittle. "Trouble," Kaelin replied, amber eyes scanning the shadows. His voice held a terse edge, pierced with something she recognized now as raw alarm. That unyielding alpha facade betrayed cracks deeper than she'd ever dared imagine. The cave-in sealed off their path behind them, cutting off retreat. The pack stirred restively, their primal instincts churning, voices lilting in feral warning. Isolde's gaze darted to the pup, panting heavily, fur bristling. A surge erupted inside her, then, sharp and sudden. Her breath hitched, sweat prickling cold along her spine, as an ancient force she had long buried clawed its way to the surface. "No," she whispered, hands trembling. "Not yet, please." But the magic would not be denied. Without warning, her arms flared with molten light, raw and ungovernable. The moonlight lost within the subterranean gloom suddenly ignited, flooding the cave with a radiance that bore the weight of centuries. The walls shimmered briefly like the surface of a disturbed lake. Images, fleeting and fierce, flashed in the brilliance. Ancient banners torn by war, eyes blazing like stars, silent battles fought beneath endless skies. And then, as if torn free from a long-lost scroll, the truth bloomed in the cavern air, irrefutable and terrible. Isolde was no mere exile or wounded pup. She was the last scion of a bloodline thought dead, the last heir of the ancient kingdom Kaelin's ancestors had crushed beneath their relentless conquest. Kaelin's amber gaze snapped to her, wide with disbelief, then narrowing with a torrent of emotion no command could tame. His voice, once steady and low, cracked with the weight of his sudden betrayal. "You," he swallowed hard, jaw tightening in a muscle-seizing effort. "You're the blood of the throne we destroyed. The ruin I thought was buried long ago." Her storm-grey eyes met his, raw and unshielded. "I am. And I will not vanish like a ghost beneath your heel." The pack around them grew restless. Low growls wove through the air, shadows shifting with uncertainty. Wolves yipped and snarled at one another, sensing the fracturing allegiance within their alpha. Their growls mirrored Kaelin's turmoil, the beast beneath his human skin, thrashing against the chains of court, loyalty, and lineage. "I should hate you," Kaelin said, voice trembling with unspoken fury and betrayal. "I should rend you from this world for what your blood represents." But he paused, anguish warring with something deeper hidden. "But I cannot. My heart defies the court's decree, betrays the honor I once swore." Isolde's breath caught, a fragile tightrope stretched between them suddenly frayed by the revelation neither wanted. The truth burned through their silence, searing wounds, raw with memory and ancient pain. "I never chose this blood," she said quietly, fingers curling into fists. "I fled to live, not to claim a crown soaked in death and despair." Kaelin's shoulders shook with the weight of his own inner battle. "The council will not forgive this. They will see you as a threat, not the pawn I tried to shield." A low growl rose from the wolves, a chorus of conflict swirling in the dim cavern, some bared teeth at Isolde's presence, like she was a shadow swallowing the alpha's light. Others snarled at Kaelin, angry at his weakness, his defiance. Isolde felt the room closing in, the fragile trust, the delicate thread between themselves and the pack, shattered now by blood stained in fire and betrayal. Her identity, once a hidden ember, had ignited into a blazing inferno that threatened to consume them all. Kaelin's hand reached for her still, trembling. "Stay with me," he pleaded, "even if the world turns against us." Her eyes softened, and though the gulf between them had deepened, so too had an unspoken hope. "I will not be your ruin," she whispered. "I will be your salvation, if you let me." Shadows folding, from fear to uncertainty, awaiting the storm to come. Banished, the words settled over Kaelin like a suffocating cloak. Cast out by his own council, stripped of his rank, and right to the throne for harboring the so-called enemy. For harboring Isolde, the last heir of the kingdom his ancestors had shattered, the hope they had sought to snuff beneath their iron paw. The decrees had cut deeper than any blade. Whispers turned to accusations. Ancient laws, wielded as shackles. The wolves he had commanded for years, the very embodiment of his power, now viewed him as a traitor. He stood alone at the edge of the wildlands, where the city's shadows dared not venture, the cold wind biting through the remnants of his cloak. His gaze found Isolde, standing proud beside him, with a fierce fire burning in her storm-grey eyes. She was no longer broken. The magic coursing through her veins was raw, untamed, and growing stronger by every passing breath. Kaelin's heart throbbed with unfamiliar heaviness. It ached, not with pride or hunger for power, but with a fragile warmth fostered in the unlikeliest of places, the woman who had defied fate and shattered the lies he had long buried. "I am a king without a kingdom," he said quietly, voice fractured but resolute. "But we still have each other. That, at least, I will not relinquish." The broken pup, now grown into a formidable wolf, with fur as dark as the void between stars, curled at Isolde's feet. Loyal and fierce, its amber eyes held a quiet promise. It had traded old allegiances for new ones, reflecting the shift in power beneath the Alpha King's fractured throne. Isolde lifted a hand, running fingers through the wolf's thick fur as her gaze locked with Kaelin's. "They wanted us broken, to make us bow before their fear and hatred." She straightened. Her scar caught the dying light, a crescent moon carved by sorrow, yet unyielding. "But we are not broken. Never again." Kaelin felt a tremor ripple through his chest, the metal walls he'd built around himself softening under the weight of her words. "You've changed everything, for the better, and yet for the worse. What can I do to protect you now, when the very blood of my enemies flows in your veins?" Her voice was fierce in the twilight. "You can stand beside me, not against me. Trust what we are becoming together." The wolves stirred nearby, their murmurs a tempest of uncertainty and disapproval. But even as the pack's murmuring grew louder, danger creeping on the periphery of their exile, Isolde's aura pulsed with authority. "Let them come," she said, tone steady and unbroken. "I will not run again. This power is mine, and so is my destiny." For the first time since his fall, Kaelin dared to hope. Hope that, in defiance, in exile, they could forge a new kingdom, not built on bones or conquest, but on trust, healing, and wild, unyielding love. The pack's broken pup rose, shoulders squared beneath a midnight coat, the fierce guardian of a fledgling kingdom rising from ashes. At Isolde's side, Kaelin felt the stirrings of something long lost and dangerously beautiful. Their scars were many, their enemies relentless, but their bond, unexpected, fragile, and fierce, was something no court decree could ever cast out. "And I will stand with you," Kaelin vowed low, amber eyes burning bright, "no matter what wolves howl in the dark." The night deepened around them, thick with the scent of earth and the cold bite of coming winter. Beneath the shrouded sky, Isolde and Kaelin moved as one, a silent rhythm forged in the fire of exile and tempered by loss. Around their feet, a gathering of outcasts and surviving wolves melded into a shifting tapestry of ash, shadow, and hope. Broken souls drawn together by the faint spark of something new. Led by the broken pup who now carried himself with steady, deliberate strength, they assembled beside the fractured remains of what once was a court, each presence a quiet rebellion against the unforgiving world outside. Isolde's fingers brushed against the coarse fur of the Alpha King's beast, an immense midnight wolf whose amber eyes reflected the flickering embers of the distant fires. It nuzzled her hand with a low rumble, and she felt the pulse of wild, untamed power beneath his twitching muscles. The wolf's breath was warm against her skin, the slow thrum of his heartbeat syncing with her own, a living tether, binding flesh to spirit, past to future. Beside her, Kaelin watched with a cautious hope, the familiar tension in his jaw slowly uncoiling as he witnessed what was coming to life. "Look at them all," she whispered, voice low, despite the echoing quiet of the gathering. Her storm-grey eyes skimmed the myriad faces, each one etched with scars, some visible, others more deeply etched into their souls. All the wolves cast aside, rejected, forgotten, but here, tonight, they choose to stay, to stand, to fight. There was neither arrogance nor false promise in her words, only the raw honesty of survival, the gravity of a shared burden, accepted Kaelin stepped closer, his tall frame casting a long shadow as he lowered his voice to match hers. You gave them hope, and they gave it back tenfold. His amber gaze locked onto hers, fiery and tender all at once. This is ours, what we build from ruin. Not a kingdom born in fear, but a pack born in trust. She felt something stir deep beneath that quiet assertion, a slow-burning ember coaxed by the warmth of his presence. Fear, still lurking beneath the surface like a lingering wound, began to dull. In its place something steadied, a promise whispered in stolen glances and shared silences. The wolves began to howl. First, a few uncertain cries, then a growing chorus that rippled through the cold air, like thunder breaking free from a sky of storm clouds. The sound was more than a warning, more than a call to arms. It was a hymn for the lost, a song for the fragile and fractured, a declaration that here, beneath the shadowed city, a new pack took breath beneath the ruined stars. Isolde felt the surge beneath her skin, the awakening of dormant power weaving through her veins, as the ancient blood of the wolf she carried pulsed stronger. The energy was wild, hungry, but tempered by something newer, clarity, purpose, and the unspoken vow of protection. She met Kaelin's eyes again, and this time her own fierce grace was laced with warmth. We rise together, she promised, not just to survive, but to own what we are. His hand found hers, rough and steady, and in that touch, the unyielding steel of the Alpha King softened to something more tender. Kaelin's beast growled low as it circled protectively, standing sentinel beside them, while the pack settled into a rough circle of allegiance. The future was uncertain, riddled with shadows and battle-worn memories, but tonight, at least, there was strength in unity. They sat beneath a canopy of stars, heavy with ancient light, the city above, indifferent to the stirrings below. Yet in that bitter cold, under the watchful eyes of the wolves, a fragile peace blossomed, one not born of conquest, but of reclaimed dignity. Days passed like slow echoes, each one marked by quiet acts that tethered Isolde and Kaelin ever closer. A shared meal by a sputtering fire, tending injured paws or souls alike, the soft exchange of burdens neither dared voice aloud. Their pack grew as whispers of their resurgence rippled through the shadowed alleys and forgotten tunnels. Those once hidden and hunted stepped forward, drawn by a hope stronger than fear. Yet, beneath the simmering calm, an undercurrent shifted, a ripple in the water that spoke of deeper storms to come. It began subtly, eyes not quite meeting in silence, words that lingered longer in the dark. Heavier than before, the whisper of dissent among the wolves, the sharp scent of treachery like a breath of rot carried on the wind. Kaelin noticed it first, the way his beast bristled whenever a certain figure moved too close, a newcomer with a glint of cold calculation behind haunted pupils. Isolde sensed the fracture even before it roared into being, a betrayal poised to unravel the threads they had painstakingly woven. The night it came, it was cruel and piercing, a blade slipped beneath the cloak of their triumph. She remembered the shatter of trust like glass, how it cut through the air, spilling shadows over the fragile warmth of their pack. The traitor struck under cover of dusk, stealing secrets that should have remained buried and turning allies into enemies with whispered lies and poisoned promises. The ambush was swift and brutal. Kaelin's beast took the brunt of the strike, a savage wound scoring deep across muscle and bone, blood dark as midnight, staining the earthen floor. The howl that tore from him was not just pain, it was a fracture of something sacred. Trust, loyalty, the fragile bond they had nurtured. Isolde's breath hitched, diving into the swirling depths of her new powers. She summoned the ancient forces flowing within, a pale shimmer rising from her scars, light weaving around her like ethereal armor. The shadows bent to her will as she shielded the broken pack, her voice a steady command amidst the chaos. "Hold fast," she urged, each word a pulse of protection. "Together, we are stronger than any blade meant to sever us." Kaelin, grim and wounded, met her gaze with a flicker of something raw and vulnerable. The beast inside him, fierce and proud, limped, but did not yield. In his amber eyes, Isolde saw the unspoken plea, not for vengeance, but for understanding. The nights that followed were haunted by whispered fears and sleepless vigils. Yet beneath the weight of pain, a deeper connection took root. Isolde, with her quiet strength and growing command of the